We're ready to taxi to the runoff area. Taxi here in November Alpha to 35.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me on the second day of my epic trip back home to Los Angeles. This morning I'm starting at Lincoln, Nebraska, and the plan is to fly straight to the west. My first stop will be Kearney, Nebraska, and my second stop will be North Platte, just to the west. My third stop is planned for Sidney, and my last fuel stop will be Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, where I will top off before climbing over the highest point of my entire trip, just east of my overnight stop at Laramie, Wyoming. This morning I'm starting a bit later than I was hoping for, because there was some weather in the vicinity of Kearney, my first fuel stop. Now I am finally on my way after receiving positive indications about the conditions ahead of me. Since this is my first takeoff of the day, I am doing a proper run-up procedure.
Let's do the runoff now. Parking brake is set. Oil temperature is above 50. Fuel pump is on. Engine gauges, RPM, oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature. 3200. Gyro, find the brake. All right. Garmin tracker. You are tracking. iPad is set. We have now 125.7. Radio responder is set. Seatbelt, headset, personal gear, secure door. Door is secure. Fuel pump 2 is on. Landing lights, strobe lights are on. Throttle brake is released. Pin is released. We are ready to go. Lincoln Grand Experimental Gyroplane 202 Bravo Golf 835 run up area. We are ready to control. Holding short 35 and talking to tower 2 Bravo Golf. Gyroplane 202 Bravo Golf, holding short and 2 approach for 35 departure. We are ready for departure to west. 35 clear for takeoff, and did you say heading 300? 300 heading after departure, 2 Bravo.
Approaching runway 32, approaching runway 35. Entered runway 35, 5,700 feet remaining.
As I depart Lincoln Airport and turn to the west, if you enjoy this type of content, please click the like button, share this video and subscribe to our channel. Please drop a comment below. A lot of useful information comes from these comments and the answers. You should also visit our online store dedicated to gyro related merchandise at www.lagyro.com/shop. The link to the store can be found in the description below this video as well. Once in the air, I turn my full attention to aviating and navigating. After a few days of flying, these tasks have become quite routine. But I don't want this to sound like I am becoming negligent. The reason it feels routine is because the mind and body have gotten in the groove of executing most aviation tasks by muscle memory, after repeating them over and over again since the beginning of the trip. This part of Nebraska still looks like Iowa, green fields from horizon to horizon. But I know the terrain is slowly climbing to higher elevations as they get further to the west toward Wyoming. Today, a broken layer of puffy clouds is providing something beautiful to look at in the sky. But this is not the only reason why I like the clouds. They also provide a very welcome protection from the rays of the hot summer sun. Flying by a town or a city is a good way to measure progress in a sea of green. I have to say though that the sea of green is not featureless. It provides many memorable views, but for the passerby like me, it is hard to use these geographical elements for orientation. Towns and cities are a different story. Most of them are named on the charts, and that is very helpful when measuring how far I have flown on that particular leg. Of course, I have a fantastic GPS unit on my dashboard, but human nature, being what it is, prefers to have something tangible as a backup. This interchange is a good example of something that could possibly be used as a checkpoint during my journey. But on the other hand, how many of these interchanges look exactly the same and are not unique enough for navigational purposes? Now, this is something more distinguishable. How many such communities do you expect to encounter flying over the Midwest? I can assure you, not many. And here is the Platte River. When I saw it for the first time on my way to the east, I was fascinated by the way its waters flow over the sandy bed. now my fascination is only reinforced. From my vantage point, the river looks like a long braid of blonde hair. I am glad I can fly on a parallel course for a while and just marvel at this natural wonder. As I approach Kearney Airport, I start my preparations for landing. Run checklist, stretch my stiff joints, and most importantly, figure out on what runway am I going to touch down. Some airports have automated weather observation systems, and those provide great weather information. When this option is not available, I have to rely on a windsock usually located at midfield. As long as I can avoid tailwind on landing, potential strong crosswind is not an issue for the gyro. Aviation traffic in and around the local airspace is another concern for every pilot approaching non-towered airports. To avoid this problem, I tune my radio on the airport's frequency about 15 miles out, then listen for communications coming from nearby aircraft. I also monitor my GPS unit displaying ADS-B traffic on the screen. But most importantly, I keep my eyes peeled, scanning the sky around me for bogies. After crossing over the runway at midfield and verifying the wind direction by looking at the windsock, I turn to left downwind for runway 36. There is no other traffic in the area, so I have the airspace all to myself. Once on the ground, I take the nearest exit as soon as practicable. Lingering on the runway is never a good idea. On the ramp I notice FBO personnel guiding me to a perfect parking spot. This is my first pit stop for today.
Alright, let's do this. Parking brake is set. Fuel switch. Instruments on. Master switch. Main pump. Strobe light on. Radio transponder off. Magnetos 1 on, 2 on. Choke we don't need it. Fuel pump 2 on. Look left, look right. Clip up! Excellent. Taxing runway 360 Alpha and take it to the chokes. That was fantastic.
After topping off the fuel tank and a quick visit to the restroom, I'm on my way to start the second leg of today's journey. My next stop is North Platte Airport.
Alright. Garmin tracker is set. Radio transponder is set. Garmin tracker iPad set. Radio set. Transponder set. Seat belts, I think they're good. Headset. I like those big foamies. Door. Let's close the door. Door is closed and secured. Fuel pump 2 is on. Strobe lights are on. Rotor brake is released. The block is released. We can try some side lift. Let's go. Current traffic, clean gyro taking runway 360, departure to the west. Current.
Approaching runway 36. Enter runway 36. 7,000 feet remaining.
Few minutes in the air and I am back in cruise mode. I mentioned in previous videos that there is a difference in the pilot's behavior between final approach for a landing and long flights between airports, what I call cruise mode. The aircraft itself feels differently. In cruise mode, you are trying to set the power to optimal level for speed while not overstressing the engine. This is usually not a set it and forget it process. You should constantly assess the weather conditions, wind, visibility, air temperature. You must also know the capabilities of your aircraft for the altitudes during the flight and, most importantly, its fuel consumption. Most corrections you are making are fairly small. The aircraft is trim, so you manage the stick with 2 fingers. Your body is somewhat relaxed on the seat while your brain is actively listening to the hum of the engine, looking for traffic, following the magenta line of your route on the GPS screen. Somewhere in the midst of all this, you find plenty of time to marvel the terrain you are flying over. And America has a lot to offer to the eye of a curious traveler. There are some things you can do to ensure your cruise mode is less stressful and free of unpleasant surprises. Proper route selection and length of each leg would prevent you from worrying about fuel. Knowledge of the local weather is important to help you avoid dangerous winds, thunderstorms, reduced visibility. Staying hydrated and well nourished will keep your mind sharp and greatly reduce fatigue. As I mentioned earlier, long cross-country flights are not something you do on a whim, but when properly planned and executed, you have plenty of time to enjoy the land you are flying over. Various landscapes, phenomenal geological features, mesmerizing clouds, all of this gets ingrained into your memory and will bring warm feelings for years to come. I am certain the type of flying modern gyroplanes provide is the final frontier of adventures left for city guys like me. And I am extremely grateful my Platte Gyro is giving me the opportunity to experience all of this. Alright, we're on our way to Sidney.
Not us. Sidney, Nebraska. Sidney, Nebraska. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. Parking brake is set, fuel switch, instruments on, main to main pump, strobe light on, radio and transponder off, magneto 1 and 2 on, we don't need choke, fuel pump 2 on, look left, look right, clip up! traffic, Gyro taxi runway 12, Papa. Traffic, Gyro crossing runway 17 at Bravo, Papa. Traffic, Gyro runway 17, Papa. Right. You guys ready? Garmin tracker set, iPad. Are you set? Yes, you are set. Thank you. Radio set. Transponder set. Seatbelts, I think they're good. Headset set. Door, let's close that baby. Door is closed. Fuel pump 2 is on. Throttle brake is released. Walk is released. Stick walk is released. You can go back. Brake is released. Moving forward. Not but after 30 taking runway 12 departure to the west. Not bad.
Approaching runway 12. Enter runway 12, 7,900 feet.
I am back in the air after a very pleasant visit to the FBO at North Platte Airport. You probably noticed there was no footage of my landing at North Platte. Well, the main camera ran out of memory and stopped recording as I was getting closer to my stop. Somehow I misjudged how much room was there on the SD card, so I was unpleasantly surprised to see the camera off once I was already on the ground. While on the subject of filming while in flight, I am trying to avoid as much as possible any manual shooting. I just don't believe it is safe to divert your full attention from flying and into another mentally intensive activity. Occasionally, I would allow myself to use my cell phone or a GoPro camera for filming short video clips, but I usually utilize cameras set to record the entire flight. Once on the ground, I can edit out the boring parts of the flight itself. Of course, there are some drawbacks to my method of shooting videos, but since safety is always my number one priority, I consider those drawbacks acceptable. By the way, my next destination is Sidney, Nebraska. Shortly after departure, I'm crossing the North Platte River for one last time. I will be following Highway 80 to the west, and the river is coming from further to the north. When I travel, I like to learn about the places where I go, so I ask the nice attendants at the FBO about the city of North Platte, and it turns out it has one of the biggest rail distribution hubs in the entire country. I can't wait to take a look at it from the air. The city itself is home to about 24,000 people, and it is the county seat of Lincoln County, Nebraska. I'm getting a glimpse of the rail distribution hub and its numerous rail lines. From my vantage point, it looks like a colorful tapestry, but I'm sure on the ground it is a hive of activities, and all of these colorful dots I see from afar are various pieces of important cargo being processed en route to their final destination. As I push further to the west, the ground elevation rises, and with that, the local climate changes. Although the land beneath me is green, it is not the same lush green I saw this morning when I was flying over eastern Nebraska. It becomes more apparent to see the difference between the irrigated green fields and the dry yellow grass of the prairie. Here and there, natural and man-made reservoirs dot the landscape. Their water provides vital irrigation for miles around. Looking at my GPS screen, I realize I'm approaching the town of Ogallala. On the third day of my eastbound trip, this was my last fuel stop before I left the perceived safety of flying close to Highway 80 and headed to the northeast, straight across a vast open cow country. It was a unique experience. I remember on that day I was dealing with very strong headwinds as I was following the highway to the east. But when I turned slightly to the north, that headwind was not so bad anymore. Ogallala is a small town, and it is not difficult to spot the high school football field in the center. Here's the airport itself at 1 o'clock. During my first visit, I landed on runway 8, which was perfect for the strong easterly wind. I also departed on runway 8, but before I could do that, I had to back taxi the entire length of the runway. I did appreciate the fact that the airport was not busy. On this trip, I'm getting used to the magnificent sights Mother Nature often provides. So I'm not surprised, but rather amused when the shadows of the clouds make the ground look like leopard skin. The town of Chapel, Nebraska is located near the place where Highway 80 and Highway 70 meet. And now I know I'm getting close to this leg's destination, Sidney Airport. As I get closer to my next destination, it is time to switch to approach and landing mode. In that mode, you will be doing more drastic changes to the controls, so you must shake off the stiffness in your body developed during the long cruise flight. Reduce your airspeed to around 55 knots, run through your landing checklist, carefully stretch your legs, even execute gentle rudder turns, just to prove to yourself you have full control of the gyro. Be sure to communicate with any air traffic around the airport, then verify the best landing option based on the prevailing local winds. After landing, my first priority is to vacate the runway. Even when the airports on this trip were mostly deserted, it is still a good practice not to linger on a runway. With the gyro, I usually try to land as close to my exit as possible. My next task on the ground is to stop the rotor from spinning. A slowly turning rotor can put you in danger during taxi, especially when there are strong winds present. Once the rotor has been secured, I can taxi to the fuel pumps with one less worry on my mind. Oh, there is one more thing to remember if you are flying a Rotax engine with turbo. Make sure you allow the turbo unit to cool down sufficiently before turning the engine off. Usually by the time the rotor stops and you taxi to the main ramp, the engine is cool enough, but you should still be aware of the importance of the cool down period. So far the progress has been good today, even with the late start. Another quick pit stop and I should be back in the air in no time.
Here we go. Alright, you're on, parking brake is set, fuel switch instrument on, main switch on, strobe, radio transponder off, magneto 1 and 2 on, shock wheel needed, fuel pump 2 on. Clear prop! Alright, Garmin tracker, iPad, radio is set, transponder, seatbelt, headset, personal gear. Locking the door. Fuel pump is on, landing glove lights, rotor brake release, lock release. Nothing Gyro taking runway 13 and Alpha 3 with departure to the west.
Approaching runway 13. Enter runway 13, 6,600 feet.
I'm back in the air and my next destination is Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. This will be a relatively short leg, but I want to avoid landing at Cheyenne for fuel, so this is the only other option. These three belts are designed to protect either cattle or the ground itself from strong freezing winds. Today the temperatures are close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so it is very hard to imagine that in the winter the local weather is bitter cold. Imagine it or not, the landscape itself suggests the climate here is extreme. As the day progresses, it feels like it takes less time to switch back to cruise mode. By now, the hum of the engine reassures me that all is fine and I can allow myself to look around and survey the surroundings. You can see that the green fields are gone and the rising terrain is covered with sturdier crops or pastures. I am also noticing the increased presence of clouds, especially toward the northwestern horizon. Upon further examination, I detect the faint outlines of convective activities. Somebody out there is getting drenched, probably a welcome relief from the afternoon heat. As much as people on the ground may appreciate a cooling rain, us pilots prefer to avoid any encounters with such conditions. A quick scan to the front of the aircraft reveals there is nothing to worry about, and the weather information piped into my GPS unit confirms that. Looking at the screen, I can see the green spots where there is rain and the yellow-orange areas where there is very heavy rain, and they all appear to the northwest of my route. It is doubly reassuring when I can match the screen indications with what I can see through the cockpit windows. As I approach my destination, I am tracking through active rain cells. One is further to the north, but the second one is to my 1 o'clock, few miles on the other side of the airport I am about to land on. It appears to me it is moving very slowly toward the east, but I cannot be 100% sure of my assessment because I am unfamiliar with the local climate and I have fairly limited experience with moving rain cells. Well, let's land and we'll reassess the situation once safely on the ground. Once on the ground, I have the opportunity to reevaluate the weather conditions. At the airport itself, the weather is perfect. Warm, sunny, light breeze. Also looking to the south, the sky is clear. The only problems brewing are to the north-northwest.
Have to get there, so let's get there.
So the plan is to get in the air before the rain cell has any chance to affect the airport, then fly around it from the south. During the time I was monitoring both rain cells, I did not see any lightning or heard any thunder, so I am not very concerned this is a fully developed thunderstorm. But I will give it all the respect it deserves. The weather to the south looks fantastic, and I have a full tank of gas, so if this cell decides to intercept my route, I feel confident in my ability to sidestep it, even if I have to stretch my last leg a bit further to the south.
Fuel switch is on.
So, that's the plan.
It's not on.
Let's put it into motion.
Fuel switch is on. Instruments. Main pump. Strobe. Off, off. Magneto 1, magneto 2. Fuel pump. Look left, look right, clear prop.
As I taxi to my departure point, I have a clear view of the rain, and it appears to be fairly static in its location. This is good because the only thing that would move it fast is a very strong wind, and nobody likes to be flying through very strong wind, especially headwind. Garmin tracker, iPad, radio, transponder, seatbelt, headset, door. Door is locked. Fuel pump 2 is on. Landing lights. Brake. Stick is released. Brake is released. 2000 RPM. Shortly after takeoff, I am facing the rain cell. It is clear that I have room to fly safely around it, but that does not diminish how awesome the picture in front of my eyes is. I have never seen such a sight even as an observer from the ground. And now I am dancing in the air in a small aircraft trying to outsmart this monster of a rain cell. From my vantage point, I do believe my plan is sound, and flying around the storm would be safe. But this is the first time I am dealing with such a thing, and it is inevitable for a certain degree of doubt to creep into my head. Any plan should be adjusted if it is warranted, but excessive second guessing must be prevented from paralyzing you. So I press on. During the day, I encountered winds from the west-southwest. Not too strong, but noticeable. That same wind was pushing the rain cells to the north-northeast. What is amazing is that as I get closer to the storm, I'm surprised how calm the wind is. I'm not sure if this is a natural phenomenon or a sensory illusion, but I'm enjoying it and I'm not complaining. It is fascinating to observe the raw power of Mother Nature. I simply cannot look away from the column of intense rainfall. The whole thing looks like a giant mushroom. As I fly around the rain cell, I do not experience any difficulties controlling the aircraft. Quite the opposite. The air appears to be very smooth. All this does not mean I am not sitting on the edge of my seat though. Besides staring at the column of rain, I do monitor the clouds above me and the overall behavior of the storm. So far, there is no price to pay for having a front row seating for this spectacular show, and I hope to keep it that way. Depending on the viewing point and its proximity to the sun, the storm can look more or less threatening, and now it looks outright frightening. This is genuinely mesmerizing. In general, I, as a pilot, would prefer clear blue skies, but having the opportunity to experience this encounter can only enrich my flying abilities, and I am soaking it all in. At this point I am clearly beyond the backside of the storm, and it is time for me to concentrate on what lays ahead. I can see more weather activities way to the north of my route. The GPS screen with its weather information confirms that all precipitation is concentrated north of the city of Cheyenne, while I will be skirting its southern edge. This is a good news for me. Usually I fly around 2,000 feet above the ground, but right before I reach my final destination for today, I must pass over a 9,000 feet high ridge. That will require for me to be at altitude of around 10,000 feet. It will be very hard for me to climb to that altitude at the last moment before the ridge, so I am starting my climb now. As I approach Cheyenne, I remember that the very first time I traveled through that city was more than 30 years ago. Back then, I took a Greyhound bus from Buffalo, New York to San Francisco, California. Now, it feels like that was in a different lifetime. On my way to the east a few days ago, I had to fly further to the south since there was a temporary flight restriction imposed over the city for the annual Frontier Days event. That event is a big deal out here and many demonstration aircraft participate. That is why the air traffic controller was very insistent I stay away from the restricted airspace. Today my transition is much simpler, and with ATC permission, I am just following Highway 80 to the west. Regardless of what the weather is doing to the north, at my location things are great for gyro flying. The wind is insignificant and the air at that altitude is cool, which helps with the performance of the aircraft. I am actually enjoying myself up here. One very important thing to remember about the local terrain is that regardless of the fact it is very flat, it is still at almost 7,000 feet of elevation. That is why, when I am at almost 10,000 feet of altitude, visually it does not feel any different than when I fly at 3,000 feet by the coastline back home. Halfway between Cheyenne and Laramie, the flat terrain turns into hills and beautiful rock formations dot the landscape. I heard someone mention that this place is popular with rock climbers from all over the world. For me, from high above, they look fascinating. I'm at the highest point of my entire trip. The elevation of this ridge is around 9,000 feet, and my altitude to cross over it is around 10,000 feet. It is hard to believe this fairly flat area is the highest point of the entire trip, but you have to keep in mind I selected this route for a reason. The goal was to avoid the rugged Colorado mountains. They may look beautiful on pictures, but they are extremely dangerous to flying of any kind. So I chose my route with the idea of flying over flat terrain as much as possible, even if in some sectors I had to maintain fairly high altitude. Beyond the ridge, I can see the city of Laramie and the faint outlines of the airport. At this final stage of today's flying, I am relaxed and allow myself to revisit the events of the day. So, started late because of marginal weather west of Lincoln, Nebraska. Visited 4 new airports and enjoyed the marvelous images outside the large cockpit windows. Flew around a spectacular rainstorm, climbed to around 10,000 feet of altitude, and now I am just gliding to my final destination for this unforgettable flying day.
Laramie. Laramie traffic, green gyro crossing the runway 30 at Alpha Laramie.
Enter runway 1230.
Laramie.
And we are done. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please give us thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. You should also visit our online store dedicated to gyro related merchandise. Just take a look below this video. Please leave comments and come back to watch the videos of the other 2 days of the return trip when they become available.
And we're here in Laramie, and you can see the storms behind us that we avoided because we came from this direction and the storms were a little to the north. But we're here and the good folks will help us put it nice and secure. And hopefully tomorrow will be good and we can continue in our high mountain adventure. But Hummingbird is fantastic. She can perform so well. See you later.